Cool. So we are with Martin 50 Cal Stapleton. How are we doing?
Doing well, thank you. Cheers for the call, man. Thanks for the invite onto the cast.
Now, I think it's maybe the most interesting man in MMA. So, where do we even
It's
begin?
Combat Sports, and that actually went on Sky Sports once, so.
Here we are. So, where do we even begin? So, let's start with lockdown. How are you holding up? How's things going?
Yeah, quite well, to be honest. I mean, I think I'm in quite a privileged position because I can get into the gym on my own. I've still got work to do here, so it gives me a little break, little bit of breathing space. I think the key to this lockdown thing is looking for the opportunities. So that's something I've been focusing on, and the family are doing well. So thanks for asking, man.
That's good to hear, man. I mean, this sort of time as well could be really sort of. I'm concerned for a lot of fighters' well-being, really, because everyone's used to, going all hell for leather all the time, always having fights, always having this kind of stuff. But to
Yeah,
then sort of, just switch that all off in almost an instant could be really sort of, shock to the system. But it's good to hear you're in a good place with everything, man.
yeah.
So talk us through your career then. So it's just how many accolades do you want? Where do we want to start? So debut. How did you get into it in the first place?
So I mean, I first got into MMA because I was on ship with a friend of mine, Si Stroud, coming back from a trip away with the Marines, and we were just watching UFC DVDs. So we just ended up getting a few mats and practicing arm bars on each other on the flight deck, which was pretty cool. And then as soon as I got back, I got in touch with the Butlin brothers, Ian, Andy, and Dave, teaching down at Quantum Gym. Dave was the head coach down there, so I got myself down there and got humbled in seconds. You know when you first walk into a gym and like I was a young Marine back then, pumping a lot of weights and a bit bigger than I am now, and thought it was proper tough. Went in there, got strangled by Ian and Dave in seconds. Got humbled, and then I just got addicted from that point.
Yeah, that's what you need, really, isn't it? So
Yeah,
that's the point you just said there. DVDs of fight shows. That's a throwback, isn't it?
yeah, it is. I found a big box of DVDs the other day, and some of them are epic. I've got all the Pride ones, all Hicks and Gracie Chalk, and I've got some like EFC from back in the day, Extreme Fighting Championships. But good memories watching them.
Oh wow, that is a lot of name dropping. Here we go. So
Yeah.
so talk us through the transition then. So how long when did you get into the Marines?
It'll be 20 years ago in November. I joined the Marines in 2000, November 2000. Um, I spent 12 years there, and then I left in 2012 to open the gym and just take up mixed martial arts full time. I felt like I was at a stage in my career where it was I had to choose one way or the other because the stuff that was going on in the Marines at the time with the commitment to Afghanistan and everything, and then the stage I reached in my pro career at fighting, I was kind of on a springboard, so I either had to put everything in and take it to the next level, or with the commitments I would have had in the Marines, I would not have been able to continue mixed martial arts at that level. So I had to choose one or the other, and I felt like I'd kind of done everything that I wanted to do in the military. It doesn't mean like I had a special career or did anything more than anyone else or anything like that, but I felt like all the things that I'd done in the military had like taught me the lessons that I wanted to get out of it. So it was a good time for me to leave. Plus, I had nothing but good times in the Royal Marines. I loved every minute of it, and I wanted to leave on a high. I always wanted to leave it behind where it was always a special memory to me. I didn't want to drag it on too long where I started regretting it or wanting to get out or getting bored of it or whatever. Felt like I had 12 good years. I loved every minute of it, and I was ready to move on.
Well, that's it. It sounds like you walk off into the sunset opposed to some sort of bitter ending kind of thing. Seems like, you really enjoyed it and, you called it a day when you're in a good place instead of, letting it get sour or whatever else happening. But yeah, it's good to
Yeah,
hear it was a nice transition with that side. And one
yeah.
thing you touched on there was a lot of lessons. Now, on your Instagram, you talk about a lot of things you've learned, how to like deal with different situations, all this kind of stuff. Where did you sort of develop that kind of mindset and that approach to situations?
So I have, and every time someone asks me about mindset, I always try and mention David Mullins, because he's been my sports psychology coach for about 5 or 6 years, and without Dave, I don't think I'd be able to use my experiences as well as I can, because Dave once spoke to me about the difference between experience and experiences. Uh, People talk about experience as like, I'm 40 years old. I've done MMA for 10 years. I've got 10 years experience. But what does that even mean? Is that 10 years of training once a week, or is it 10 years of training twice a day for 2 hours with top level pros? Experience and experiences are different things. So what Dave had me doing within the martial arts aspect of my life was looking back through my career at all the individual little experiences I've had and drawing them out so that I could use them, in my preparation, in my fights. And then further on from that, I've tried doing that with my experiences from the Royal Marines. Again, like I said, I did 12 years, but again, what does 12 years mean? It's the experiences within that 12 years that kind of build a person, that build your mindset. So it's a combination of all those things. And luckily, within the Royal Marines, because it's such a professional outfit and because it's been going for so long, every time you kind of reach a new rung on the ladder, you get put on a course. Maybe it's a command course or a higher level of the skill set that you're in. And all them courses are so well developed, not just teaching new skills, but at teaching you how to command other people, how to overcome obstacles, how to overcome adversity, how to adapt to situations, things like that. And I think at the time while you're doing those courses, you don't quite appreciate how much you're learning. But afterwards, when you get time to look back and reflect on them, my time in the Royal Marines is what really has molded my mindset and the way I try and live my life.
So, with that kind of different, that was really interesting. That experiences. That
Yeah,
kind of
that's
thing.
what mine. That's
That
Dave
is.
Mullins is. I've got to give it him
That's
credit
it.
for that.
Copyright, trademark.
Copyright.
Yes. With that, so there's so much to sort of ask of this. So let's go from one thing at a time. So before a fight, the sort of nerves, adrenaline, that kind of thing. How do you use that kind of mindset? Because obviously the thing of it being like, in a real war and being in actual proper danger opposed to a fight, which is still danger, but it's a lot different. How do you give it the same level of attention, I guess? Level of concern?
Well, I think they're both different forms of combat, right? So they're on the same. They kind of follow the same parallel lines, except MMA is a bit of a, like you say, a bit less risk. Whereas being in a war, being in the military, it is at higher risk. But I think they kind of both follow parallel lines in the fact that you're going out onto an unknown situation. It's not, you know what the situation is in terms of what you've got to do while you're there, but you don't know what your enemy or your opponent's going to do. You don't know exactly what their strengths are going to be, how well prepared they're going to be. You've got to be ready for any like mishaps, any mistakes that are made, or any kind of surprise situations that come up. So they are, although the risk is in Warzone is death, whereas the risk in MMA is you'll lose a fight. It's not the same. I still think they're on the same parallel. So, I mean, in terms of like how do I deal with it, or how do I use, or how do I kind of put myself on the same level of a mindset as I would in a war zone? I don't think there's a need to put yourself on the same mindset, because the like I said, the outcomes are different. But the mindset should be similar in that you've got to trust your preparation. You've got to trust what you've done before you've got there. Before you've got to fight night, all your fight camp, all the training you've done, and that trust is built again daily. It's not I've done a 12-week fight camp. It's what work have you put in every minute of every hour that you've been on the mats. And once you've built that kind of thing, you can you can trust it, then you can trust that work's been put in, and you can trust that it's going to be something you can apply on fight night, just like you would in a war zone. I think the second thing I'd say that makes them both similar there is that you've got to be ready to. It's a bit of a cliche, ready to risk it all, but you have in a way, because obviously in a war zone you are risking it all. If you get caught with a stray round, you're not going home. In MMA, you're risking it all in terms of you're going into a fight and there's a crowd watching you, maybe people at home watching you, your friends and family, and there's a good risk that you're going to take a loss. You might be humiliated, look stupid, whatever it is. So you've got to be ready, or that's another similarity there, that you've got to be ready to take those risks. I know that failure is right there. You know, it's not, people say, oh, failure is not an option and all that. Failure is right there at all points, you know, and you've got to be ready to accept that before you go into a war zone or a fight. Does that kind of answer that question? I don't want to waffle too long.
First of all, feel free to waffle, because this is really interesting, especially for me, if nothing else. And there's, again, so many points to sort of go from there, like experiences, that details in the fight camps. Wow, this is more for me than anyone else at this point. But and that's another point with all this, is obviously you said about failure, because obviously failing in a war sort of scenario and sort of a lot higher risks.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's devastating, and it's, you know, a lot more, without going into too much detail. But how do you compare it to a fight, losing a fight, and how you deal with that? Like, obviously, because you're not used to failure in the other sense. Well, I hopefully not. But
yeah. Well, kind of. I mean, so in a fight, I think I'm at the stage in my career now where I can understand it for what it is. Obviously, you put your heart and soul into training camp, right? You put everything you've got into it. You tick all the boxes. You go over and above. But when you fail and you lose, like back in the day when I was younger, I'd properly take it to heart, and I'd feel like I'd let everyone down, and you know, I'd properly question myself. You know, I'd really question, and you know, I'd see people that I train in the gym with, and I'm thinking, I'm better than him, but he's winning his fights. But, you know, what's wrong with me if I'd lost a fight or whatever? But now I've kind of developed a professional's mindset on it. So if I lose a fight, yeah, I might sulk for a few hours or whatever, but immediately I'm going looking for the lessons. Immediately I'm going back, watching the fight over, looking at what I did wrong. I'm analysing my training camp. I'm analysing my coaching, how I could have been more coachable, how I could have been a better athlete for my coaches, what mistakes I made tactically and strategically in the fight. I think one of the keys to not getting overwhelmed by failure is to do that straight away. Just get straight on it, straight into the mindset of what lessons can I take, rather than sitting around and sulking about it. Before I move on to the military thing, is the other thing I'd say is losing a fight is not failure, especially in MMA. Randy Couture, one of the best fighters ever, has got a 50-50 record. Losing a fight is not failure in any sense of the word. Quitting is failure. If you lose a fight and you throw your gloves in because you've spat your dummy out of the pram, that's failure. If you lose a fight, you go back to the drawing board, you learn some lessons, and you come back. That's not, even if you lose your next fight, but you've been able to apply them lessons, you've not failed at anything. You've got a little bit better. Maybe you weren't good enough to beat this guy this time, this opponent this time, but you've developed yourself. You've got a little bit better. So that's not failure. Now, in the military, so failure in the military is a different thing, because if I fail to do my job in the military, if we're in Afghanistan or whatever it is, if I fail to do my job to the standards required of me, that's going to affect somebody else. Somebody else could lose their life or be put in a life-threatening situation or whatever it is. That's a different level. That's something. For me personally, I've never had a situation where I made a mistake or one of my team members made a mistake that meant we lost somebody, lost one of our team members. So I've never actually had to experience failure on that level. We did lose people in Afghanistan, which is totally different to losing a fight. It's something you can't come back from. It's something you obviously go away, you try and learn the lessons for next time you're out on operations, so that they don't happen again, and so that you make better choices, better decisions, you come tactically better. However, you're not getting that person back. He's not coming back, so you can't take them mistakes back the same as you can in a fight. That is something that's very hard to deal with, and I think every military man that's been to war and has lost their colleagues will tell you that's very hard to deal with, and it's something that every single person is going to have a different kind of method of doing. Some people deal with it better than others. Fortunately, because I was exposed to war zones from being about 19 years old, I've had a lot of experience in dealing with them sort of things. Or unfortunately, depends which way you can look at it. But it means I've kind of got a clearer mindset. So when, by the time I was leaving the military, I was able to kind of help the younger guys through them kind of times.
Again, there's so many things to dissect from all these stuff.
Thanks, man.
Where do I even begin with this? I mean, touching on, as you've said, obviously it's worlds apart of what failure means and the repercussions of that. When you're in a war zone and seeing all these sort of horrific things, people talk about PTSD quite a bit and the treatment after the fact. When you're in these war zones and in these like really hostile situations, is there any sort of support network on there? Are people normally quite open to chat about this kind of stuff, or is it a bit more like keeping it quite reserved and trying to, put in the face?
So, and other people in the military might have had different experiences from me, right? So this is my experience of that. This isn't an all-encompassing thing, but this is my experience of that. All the times I went on operations, I was very fortunate in my military career that I always had excellent commanders, excellent leaders, and excellent leaders within the group. So by that I mean a leader might be a sergeant or a corporal, but a leader within the group might be just a senior Marine who's been in a few years longer than me. He's got a bit more experience than me. And I was extremely fortunate that I was always surrounded by guys that were much better at the job than I was and much more professional and much more tuned in. So I always had someone to follow, if that makes sense. Now, in the kind of groupings of men that you'll find in the Royal Marines, it is a alpha male mentality. It's a grouping of every single bloke there's an alpha male. Everyone there's a silverback gorilla. Everyone's trying to one-up each other on how fit they are, how professional they are, how good they are on operations, how good they are at every little skill in operations, and that also leads to a mentality of when you're in a war zone, you're almost, I don't know how I'd say it, war torn or conditioned to it. So while you're there and you are seeing these kind of, I don't know if I'd describe them as horrific personally because I've learnt things from them. So, but when you are seeing these kind of daily scenes, daily scenarios that not other people don't see, firefights and stuff. From my experience of the people that I was with, it is a kind of you get stuck into it. You love every minute of it, and if things do go badly, people usually in the war zones, if in Afghanistan or Iraq, they kind of deal with it fast because you have to deal with it fast. If something goes wrong, you haven't got time to sit back and analyse and look at it. Whilst you're in the moment, you've just got to get on with it and get cracking on. Now, you might come back to camp or you might bivvy up at night out in the desert somewhere, and obviously you'll do a debrief of what's gone on that day, what happened, and how you can report it back and how you can make it better for the next day. So you do that on like a professional level, like a tactical and strategical level with all the commanders. And then when you get back to your bivvies at night or you get back to your room at night, you're obviously in there with the lads who've been out on the same sort of operations as you have with you. So the support network really comes from you and the lads around you, all aiming at the same mission, all having one goal in mind. and kind of following each other on the journey. If that makes sense, it's not like you reach out for support, like someone to speak to. It's like you've got 10 lads around you, 20 lads around you who all understand exactly what's going on, exactly what you're going through. And they've all still got that same mentality of, we're the best, this is what we do.
This is where it gets quite interesting, because a certain thing I wanted to pick out from that, obviously I haven't got any experience of this, it's just from an outside perspective. But obviously with the whole, you've got to stay strong, you've got to keep moving forward and all this kind of mentality. And obviously if you're relying on people to then be prepared to die for you and the rest of it, you don't want to show any weakness. And then with everyone wanting to talk about mental health and stuff, you don't want people to then come out and say, oh, I'm struggling because of what we saw the other day, because then you might have doubt in them, and then it might instill us a little bit. So I wasn't sure if there was...
So, I mean, in the moment, while you're on operations, again, from my experience, and people, I want to tread carefully with this, because other people might have had different experiences, and what I'm about to say might kind of, if anyone is suffering from PTSD, it might kind of upset them, or they might see it differently. But from my kind of experience, in the moment when you're on operations, there was none of that. There was never any time where someone, maybe they reacted to something badly, or they were feeling bad, or they were suffering from anxiety or whatever. In the teams that I was in, the Marines I was surrounded by were so good that I could always turn to someone and say, fucking hell, AD, whatever happened today, I fucked up there, or blah, blah, blah. And he's not going to look at me any differently. He knows what level of soldier I am. He would know what kind of guy I am. He stood by my side day in, day out, weeks on end, months on end, years on end, seeing how I operate. So just because I had a little mental slip that day wouldn't mean that he would think any less of me. He just helped me get back on track. And I'd do the same for him, because that's what being a team's about, isn't it? No one would ever look down on each other. But the reason I said earlier that was my experience is because not everyone is fortunate enough to be surrounded by professionals the way I was. I'm guessing sometimes people felt like they couldn't speak out, or they couldn't speak in a certain way because they would look down on it. But that was never my experience. And for anyone that did have that experience, I would feel very disappointed that the people around them couldn't support them in that way.
And that's something as well to sort of brush up on, because with this whole PTSD mental health kind of spectrum of things, it is different people deal with it different ways, and there's no right or wrong collective way. But I like the way you dealt with that, and the way your process of not letting your mistake keep you down as such, because people talk about learning from mistakes, they don't talk about how to deal with them. Because if you sit there and sulk about it, trying to work out what you did wrong, that's killed your momentum. You haven't, you've still got to crack on with what you're doing.
Yeah, that's the same in life, though, right? I mean, look, you make a mistake in life, you've got a problem, or you do something wrong or whatever. Sitting around and sulking about it doesn't help. It doesn't change it. Getting, worrying about it, that doesn't benefit you. Name me 3 benefits of worrying.
Panicking, stressing, and failing.
Yeah, name 3 benefits of it. Yeah, there's no benefits. Name 3 benefits of getting stressed out. There's no benefits to these things. For me, in life, if I make a mistake, I just want to accept it. I want to own it, first of all, take total ownership for everything that's gone wrong, and look at what I could have done differently. And that's the key, I think. I think the longer you spend worrying or panicking or flapping, or even the longer you spend trying to look for things to blame, people to blame, or I wouldn't have done that if he didn't do this, or she didn't do that, or if he wouldn't have said this, I wouldn't have done it. That's just the blame game, man. That gets you nowhere, and that's stepping you backwards in life. It's not stepping you forwards.
I definitely would give you a good sort of foundation when it comes to being humbled and then dealing with this whole sort of martial arts kind of world, coming from that mindset of, okay, I accept responsibility for what I'm doing. I'm here to learn, here to get better. That kind of, I'd say grounded. You sort of, where your feet are. You're self-aware with what's going on.
I try to be. I think when I hear statements like that, where people do say things like that, where someone's grounded or something, I just think I'm not grounded. I try to be. I try to be, and I try to develop that every day. And I try to pass that on to my students that I coach as well every day. I don't think anyone's the kind of be all and end all and done it and has got to a point where they can say, yeah, I'm grounded or I'm humble. But I think if you can try to be a little bit more grounded or a little bit more humble each day, I try not to talk in absolutes. Do you understand what I mean? If someone would say to me, this guy's this, to me, I'm like, he's getting good at that, or he's good at applying that, whatever that is.
But that goes back to your point of experience versus experiences sort of thing. So it's not an absolute. It's what does that dissect down to? What does that mean? That substance of it.
Mate, I had a conversation the other day with one of my friends who we had a disagreement on, and I literally said to him, I said, "You're acting like a dickhead," and he says, "You calling me a dickhead?" And I said, "No, you're not a dickhead, but you're acting like a dickhead." Does that make sense? Yeah. So I'm not talking in absolutes, but at that point in time, and it's the same with this. Because you act in a certain way doesn't mean you are that way, but you're acting that way now. So I don't think I'm humble. I don't think I'm anything different than anybody else. But I'm trying to develop those skills daily. Is basically what my mindset is on them things.
Well, definitely, you don't get good or bad people. You have neutral people, exactly. and their actions are either good or bad. That individual action was either that or this, and so on and so forth.
You know what? And if you don't mind me going on a tangent,
feel free. Get stuck on.
Is that all right?
Get stuck in.
That's the crazy thing with this coronavirus right now, because you've got people, like some people are totally, they believe absolutely everything the government says, and they're terrified and they're scared of what's going on. They're reading the media, and that's absolutely fair enough. That's their opinion, and that's what they've drawn from those things, or that's the thing. Those are the things that they've been most drawn to from the information they've received. You've got other people on the other side that think it's a total conspiracy, or think that the 5G masks are giving us coronavirus or whatever. And again, that's the things that they've been drawn to, or the ideas that they've believed in from what they've heard. Now, the problem with it is that you've got people there that are friends in real life, but if you look on the Facebook, they're calling each other, "You idiots that believe this are idiots," or "are this or that." And then you've got on the other side, "You sheeple that believe this," and you, just because you disagree on a certain subject doesn't mean you have to call each other names. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like I can disagree with someone on the way they're dealing with this coronavirus or their opinions on it, but it doesn't mean I think they're an idiot. I just disagree with that one opinion. I don't think they're an idiot. I might think they're acting idiotically, but I don't think they're an idiot. Does that make sense?
Well, definitely. I'll have a debate and an argument. It doesn't mean I hate the person. It means they've got an opinion. It means they've got something else.
Yeah.
If you start,
I think a lot of people should remember that right now with this coronavirus thing, because there is a lot of people going on Facebook, "You idiots this, you knobheads that." There's no need for it, man. Just voice your opinion if you want to. Tell people how you believe this should be dealt with, but there's no need to put other people down at the same time.
So we'll just get along and all be friends.
Let's all just try and develop.
This is it.
Yeah.
I mean, this goes on to another couple of things as well, like where social media giving people a voice they didn't have beforehand, and all these opinions they didn't have before the other. There's all this sort of stimulus of people giving their opinions, giving their 2 cents worth, then alters other people's perspective on certain things. Like, that's exhausting. I've got to try and stay off it.
That's the problem with influence. We live in a day and age now where someone sees a Facebook article and the headline of the article agrees with their point of view. So they share the article without reading it just because of the headline. And then that influences the opinions of their friends and family. They then read the headline and share it, and then all of a sudden you've got loads of people that are taking in these opinions without actually doing the research and due diligence. But that goes for anything in life as well, in my opinion. I like to do my research. If I'm going to voice my opinion on something, I'm going to weigh up the research on both sides of the spectrum with no opinion previously made. So I'm going to look at it from an objective standpoint look for the pros and cons or the arguments for and against. You know, rather than just putting info out there that's and advocating that I'm a font of all knowledge on it, when really, especially in this coronavirus, none of us know a thing, man. None of us have got a clue. None of us know anything. So yeah, that's a crazy thing with the social media environment that we live in right now. Information is easy to get hold of, it's easy to distribute, and it's easy to bypass the actual act of understanding and researching it. You know, it's just a quick transaction, seen, shared.
And on top of this kind of stuff as well is like that same umbrella of a statement of certain people are left, some people are right, some people are whatever views they've got. That doesn't mean that's who they are as a person. That just means that's something they believe in. And that goes back to what I was saying earlier.
Mate, exactly what you're saying there. I love the way you said it there. It's like who I am as a person is a dad, a family man, a martial artist, a former Marine, and a friend. That's who I am. Do you know what I mean? Nothing else. None of the rest of it matters. The achievements don't matter. What clothes I wear, what car I drive, none of that shit matters. That's who I am as a person. I have differing opinions on different subjects, but none of them opinions affect who I am as a person. And that's the way I look at other people. You know, I've got people who come into my gym who are my friends, they're martial artists, they're fighters, they've got family at home, they've got kids at home, and that's who they are to me. They're my student, they're my friend, they're a dad, they're someone I want to help progress in their career. They might have totally different opinions from me on absolutely everything, from coronavirus to what car to drive to what music. It doesn't matter to me. It doesn't matter whatsoever. Just what matters is who they are as a person, how they act. You know what their character is.
I need you to get a podcast just to motivate me every day, please. So you touched on the sort of training partner. So talk to us about SBG, because you've got
where do we start?
A wealth of talent. You got Jack Cartwright, you got Stephen Hooper, you've got all these sort of big names. Still Rogers.
Yeah.
So when did you get into SBG? Have you always been there? Is it something you've recently joined, or how long have you been there for?
I think late 2013, I think it was, I joined SBG. So I followed SBG for years. So when I was back in the military, myself and a gentleman called Pete Jordan were asked to rewrite the close quarter combat syllabus for the Royal Marines, which is like the hand-to-hand combat syllabus, the weapons combat syllabus. So me and Pete did like an audit of what was being taught at the time, and we put together a new program to put out there. And one of the problems we had in the military in teaching hand-to-hand combat was so there's pre-designated coaching methods in the military. So one of them is called EDIP. So for instance, if I was teaching a weapons lesson, I'd do EDIP. I explain, demonstrate, imitate, and practice. So I explain what I'm about to do, I'll demonstrate it, then I'll get them to imitate it step by step, and then I'll get them to go away and practice. That works great with weapon lessons. That does not work with martial arts classes. Because in a martial arts class, people need to come around, they need to see it in action, they need to develop timing, they need to develop muscle memory. There's so many more aspects to it that they need to develop, pressures, postures. That kind of coaching doesn't work. So I was looking for a better coaching method that we could implement into our close quarter combat syllabus. And I'd always been reading the SBG stuff about the I method, the introduce, isolate, incorporate method that we use, where we'll introduce a technique or a pressure or a posture, then we'll isolate it for a lot of time. So you're developing your timing, you're developing your movement, you develop your postures, your pressures, and then we'll finally integrate it. So we'll integrate it into maybe a full round or a full drill or whatever it is. And I was following SBG back in them days to make the Royal Marines method of coaching better. So skip forward to like about 2013. It was always when I was looking for kind of somewhere to call home, it was always going to be SBG for me. And then as soon as I went over and met Carl Tanswell, it was a done deal. He was just a phenomenal character, an amazing man, amazing coach, and someone that I knew I had to work with this guy. I had to. And that's where it started for me, yeah.
To have that kind of relationship as well is so important because, as you said earlier, about the trust you put in someone, the trust you put in the camp and everything else. And if that is so natural, that trust is almost, unwritten. You don't have to say anything. You know it's there. That must have given you so much more confidence going into these fights and going into your career from there.
Yeah, that's an aspect. I'm actually talking to Alex Enland about tonight on an Instagram live. Is the fighter coach relationship, and that's, for me, that's massively important, and it always has been. And again, that goes back to my time in the military, because if I've got a section commander who's my corporal and he's asking me to go into the front door of a building, I need to know that guy's tactically aware, that that he's done his homework, that he's done his research, that he's got the experience, he's done this before. I need to have total trust and belief that he's sending me to do something that I'm not just going to get blown up on. But it's the same in MMA. You have to have a relationship with your coach where you trust them 100%. You know that they've got your best interest at heart. You know that they're ready to put the extra work in. You know that they understand you as a fighter. They're not just giving you a cookie cutter program or ticking a box. They understand you, who you are, your goals, your aims, how you like to be coached, or how to get the best out of you when they're coaching you, that kind of thing. And obviously with Carl Tanswell, I'm with Matt Inman, who coaches me now. I found two of the best in the world, in my opinion. Again, though, I've been very fortunate in terms of that throughout my career, because as soon as I started MMA, when I started training with the Butlin brothers, they were, and they're still two of my closest friends, three of my closest friends even, to this day, because they took so much of an interest in the fighter, not just like a cookie cutter program. They take so much interest in me as a fighter, in my development, that it built trust in them. And then I was training over at Cowbon for a good few years with Colin Heron, who's an amazing coach. And again, he's the same. He builds that trust as a coach, that when you're going into there, that this guy's got your back. He understands you, and he's there for you. So for me, that's always been something that, as a fighter, I've always looked to a coach for, and now as a coach, that I always look to develop with my fighters.
Again, there's so much to dissect. This is so much. We could go for all day, to be fair. Get comfy, that's what I'm saying. So,
I'm always comfy.
This is it, perfect.
Comfortable being uncomfortable.
That's what we want. So, again, what you said there, how specific it has to be, because with fighters and just people in general, there aren't two people the same. Even twins are not the same. They're just... But you can't give this one-size-fits-all thing, especially for MMA, especially for like jiu-jitsu, all these kind of complex martial arts. And to have that level of care, level of attention, is what you need, because to get that kind of development and to notice those kind of areas. Yeah. So how come you went over to Colin at Calburn then? Why did you go over to Liverpool then, when you're Manchester?
So I can't remember what year this will be. It might be about 2008 or something. Obviously, I was still in the military, and I started training, doing a bit of cross training with like Rob Sinclair and them guys. And again, Rob Sinclair's a close friend of mine. Rob took me over to Kelbon, so I started doing a bit of cross training over there. And I think the first day I went over to Kelbon was a sparring day, and over at Kelbon it was known as Terror Tuesday. I think it still is. And let me tell you, I was a pro fighter at the time. I'd had a few pro fights. Pro fighter, it's not.
Oh, here we go. Experiences and all that.
Yeah, I was a pro fighter in terms of what a pro fighter meant in 2008. I wasn't a pro fighter in terms of what it is today. Antonio Sheldon's one of my pro lightweights. He would have kicked my ass on my pro debut. When it's a different level nowadays. But I was a pro fighter anyway. Is the point I'm getting to. And I went over to Kelbon sparring on the Terror Tuesday, and let me tell you, I got my ass kicked. The names over there, Terry Ames, Scano, them guys were just on a total different level to what I was. And obviously, as I alluded to earlier, I'm a guy who kind of, if I go somewhere and I feel like I've got a connection or I can listen to someone, then I want to listen to them more. And as soon as I went over there and I started listening to Kelb on the way, listening to Colin the way he talks to his fighters and stuff, I wanted more of it at the time. And that's how I got started over there. Excellent coach, excellent facility, excellent gym, and I just got my ass handed to me.
Properly humbled. How was that received then
humble.
from Carl and everyone?
Listen,
Obviously,
let me
training.
tell you have never been kicked in the leg until you've been kicked in the leg by Terry Ames. That's a different experience. That's a different experience, man. You don't want to walk for weeks.
Oh God! See the likes of him, like Darren Till, all the other sort of big guys over there, like Tom Aspinall. I mean,
Tom's an animal. Tom's phenomenal. What? The thing with Tom is, he's a heavyweight, but he moves like a lightweight. Tom's in the heavyweight division now in the UFC. He could probably work on the ground against anyone in that division. He's probably as good on the ground as anybody in that division. But people don't understand how good he is on the feet. If you look at him boxing, you look at him striking, he moves like a lightweight. He's not heavy and sluggish. He's not looking for the power shots. He moves around nice and light. He floats around. He sets his shots up, but the power's there when he needs it. Tom Aspinall's going to be a UFC champion, man.
He used to be a pro boxer as well, didn't he?
Yeah, he did some pro. He was down at Team Fury.
All the name drops in this podcast. Wow, I want to get my thumbnail sorted. So, what was the atmosphere like with cross training? And obviously coming from a different place and walking in. So, say coming on Terror Tuesday, you are a pro fighter. Obviously, by your standards, you were describing. What was that? Was it them versus us kind of mentality, or was it they're quite open and welcoming? Obviously, you know.
Again, mate, it's one of them things. I feel like I've had so many lucky or fortunate experiences in my life because I got in touch with the guys down at Kelbon and they understood my position. So I was in the military still. So my position while I was in the military was I had to train as and were. So when I was down south during the week, Monday to Friday, I was training at Exeter Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, another excellent place. I was training over at Andy Barker's SDCS. I was training at a few places. Then I'd come home for a weekend. I'd get a training session in at Kelbon because they had one on a Friday night. Saturday morning, I'd go over to Quantum and train. Sunday morning, Rob Sinclair and Mick Sinclair would do some training with me. So because of the situation I was in, I had to fit training in as and when I could, where I could. And I tried to keep it to them kind of nucleus of gyms. And they all understood where I was at the time. They all knew that I couldn't be training with them 6 days a week because I was living up and down the country. And everyone was really welcoming. Yeah, I mean, that was my experience. I had nothing but good things to say about the way people treated me and welcomed me.
I mean, that is really refreshing to hear because you get a lot of places that are very political, very them versus us kind of thing. And this is where we are, you're either with us or you're against us, all these kind of places. But it's really refreshing to hear that they understood, like, obviously, it's a bit different situation because obviously you had to move around because of being in the forces and everything. But even still, they were welcoming and, you know,
yeah,
it's really refreshing.
I think you can. One of the things is this, though, isn't it? I think you can spot those kind of gyms that are going to be political and cultish and stuff. You can spot them a mile off. So I just don't think I would have gone to one of them in the first place. Because you look around and you do see a little bit of that still, and I just think I would not have personally been drawn to them places. So the fact I would have never had them experiences, if that makes sense. I would have just never had them. I can't be doing with that sort of shit. People who are political about fighting, or if I go to a gym and they start talking shit about another gym day one, I'm not going back there. I don't want to hear that. You know, I just want to train. I want to focus on getting better. I don't want to focus on bitching about what other teams are doing or other people are doing. On the same thing as that, though, I do understand some gyms are very heavy on like gym loyalty and stuff, but gym loyalty it's a two-edged sword because as a coach, the way I see things is like this: I want all my fighters and all my team to be training here with each other as often as possible to sharpen all the tools. So if they want to fight for us, I want to see them on competition team classes, and I want to see them on the Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I want to see them on sparring, on the hard grappling classes and all that. However, outside of that, I don't mind if they go and spar at another gym if it's going to add to the development. I don't mind if they go and hit pads with someone, or if they go and roll with someone at another gym or another team. Obviously, if one of my pro fighters has got a fight coming up and one of his teammates is going training at the gym where his opponent trains, that's not going to be a good situation. And I think a good team culture, that would never happen. But I still don't mind my guys going out to do a bit of sparring or a bit of pad work or a bit of grappling at other gyms, whenever. Because if it's going to add to their development, it's got to be about them, not me. I can't be a coach who sits back and say, no, you've got to coach. You can't go and train with them guys. You've got to train here with me. Because that then it becomes about me. It don't become about them. It's always got to be what's best for the fighter. And if it does come to a point where you've got a fighter who's training more often with other teams than he is with your team, then that's when it gets to the point where you say, look, let's not have any hard feelings or anything. But if you're doing your thing, you're more than welcome to come and train here all the time. But you've got to understand that my personal time that I spend on doing one-to-one stuff and game planning stuff is going to be spent with the guys that are here 5 days a week, not the guys who turn up once a month. Do you understand what I mean? I believe there's got to be a balance with that kind of thing. You can't just say it's all or nothing. You've got to train here or nowhere. And I also believe that you've got to show loyalty where you want loyalty.
That is, again, there's such a huge spectrum with all this kind of thing, and it's good that you've been objective about it, no sort of bias, despite being a coach and all the rest of it. Yeah. Because there is that trade-off, because yes, you want them to develop the best they can, but you also want them to be there for everyone else. You want them to be, be a part of the team, but also, be the best member of the team and help everyone else out. So it's a bit of a catch-22 in trying to, and again, it's case by case. Different people can develop certain ways. Again, it's case by case, but it's good that you've got that mindset on it.
What I would say on that is, I would say it's kind of like you're gonna get. So it starts with your team culture, right? So, excuse me, too much coffee. It starts with your team culture, right? So if I'm putting a culture, or if I'm trying to implement the culture in my team of accountability, i.e. my students turning up and training with us on the mat with the rest of the team 4 or 5 nights a week, then that starts with me. So I have to be showing accountability. So I have to be there on time, dressed correctly, looking sharp, with good lesson plans, ready to go every day, just like I'm expecting them to turn up every day with the kit ready, with the mindset ready to train hard. It also comes from, or it also is developed by, your fighters must know that you're trying to help them first and foremost. You're there to help them. You're not there to take the money off them, like get memberships paid. You're not there to win a belt for the gym that you can put up on the wall and show off how good you are. You're there to help that fighter be the best that they can be. And then if they believe in that, if it's true and if it's honest, if it's believable, then I don't really think you have to worry about the rest of it, them going somewhere else or all that kind of stuff. Because if you develop that relationship from the start and they can see that you're consistent, that you're truthful, that you're honest, and that you really want to help them, then the people that you want to work with will be drawn to work with you. Now, there's going to be the odd 5 or 10% that still just like to float about and do their thing, and that's fine, man. That's fine if that's what a fighter wants. Or do you know what? Forget the name fight. If that's what a person wants, to be as happy as they can be and get the most out that they can get out of martial arts, then that's fine. I don't hold anyone back from doing that. I wouldn't tell anyone not to do that. But then they've got to understand that the coach, he has to put in his time and effort with the guys that are showing those attributes of loyalty and commitment and consistency and those kind of teamwork, team ethics, those kind of things.
Well, it goes back to what you were saying earlier. So say like when you first went to SPG and then you had to go different tours and everything else and then go around different places in the UK, you know where your home was. You know where your gym was. You didn't need to make a point of it as such. You had your impression. You know where your, bread's buttered and stuff. So you didn't have to justify what you were doing because you knew in your sort of heart of hearts honesty, you understood yes, you're training in other places, but you know where you're going to put your effort and you know where your trust is. So again, when having your own experience with that really helps, because you get a lot of coaches who will say these things without
Yeah.
having that personal experience of having the need to train in other places and understanding
Yeah.
that it's not, the be all and end all. You can come back.
I mean, what kind of hypocrite would I be if I said to all my fighters, you can't ever train anywhere else, you have to stay here all the time, when I spent the first 6 years of my pro career having to do that, forcibly having to get around and cross-train. I'd be some kind of hypocrite if I told my fighters they can't do that now. The one thing that's changed in that time period is the quality of MMA gyms and like the experience in the quality of the facilities and what's available. Like, because when I first started out, you'd have to travel 10 miles to train with the BJJ blue belt. Now there's 20 blue belts at every gym. You'd have to drive an hour and a half to travel with a black belt if you could find one. Now there's a black belt around the corner, in every town almost. So I think in those kind of things, there is a lot more scope for people to focus all the training in one facility, because they have got more training partners, better coaching available to them, more knowledge available to them under one roof nowadays, than we did have back in the day, if that makes sense.
I mean, this is something I've touched on beforehand. That this is where we live now. It's the best year for MMA, and it's going to get better as well. The accessibility of training, because you hear stories of people traveling all over the UK to try and find someone who's got a mat or someone's got an old church they could use or something like this. But now there's the quality gyms, there's people with experience, and it's just going from strength to strength, really.
Yeah, I mean, the MMA scene at the moment, well, before lockdown, I think it was, again, it's been booming for the last few years, and that's obviously hugely down to the success of a lot of the UK fighters have had in the UFC and Bellator and Cage Warriors, how that's brought up, been brought up on the platforms that they've got going on now on UFC Fight Pass and when they were on Channel 4 and stuff. But it's also down to the work of the people that haven't been seen, all the fighters and all the coaches that have been grinding away behind the scenes for years on the smaller shows, that maybe the public don't know about, but they've still been out there doing it week in, week out, developing the sport. And those are the guys that I meet them at shows, events, here, there, and everywhere. And people might not know the names, but to me, they're icons. To me, they're my idols.
And again, this is where you put your weight and where you sort of see that value. And it's again, this is what you appreciate from not just your experience, but your experiences.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, experiences of being at shows every weekend and meeting people, seeing how they warm the fighters up, seeing how they corner people and blah blah blah, and that has developed the game to what it's at now. And it has been a boom the last few years, and I hope after this coronavirus thing calms down, I hope we get back to that.
100%. A few questions just on a sort of side note. So with your fight camps, being a coach, how do you find time to manage all that?
It's hard, very hard. This is something that I've learned over the years, or the last few years, should I say, and I was devastated I didn't get to show it on Cage Warriors on March 7th because my opponent obviously pulled out with an illness on the day. But in the past, I've been, so I'm a person that I'm always going to try and, I get in the car, I'll tell my kids to put the seatbelt on, but I won't put my own on, or I never give myself as much attention as I give others. I'll never put as much effort into myself as I'll put into others. So in the past, I've done fight camps and I've been getting 2 or 3 hours of training in myself. And then I've been doing game planning for my fighters. I've been watching tape on their opponents and planning this and that. But I've not been doing that for myself because it's me. And I've never really cared about myself. I've never took care of myself in that way, should I say. I've always spent my time and energy on my students and stuff. On this fight camp, I made sure that I did that. I made sure that I sat back and watched my opponents and did some game planning, got specific stuff done, and took a bit of time out just for myself to go and reflect on training and maybe meditate on it a little bit. so time management was a key in this last fight camp, and that's something I'm going to take forward with me now forever. Is just managing my time better and making sure that I'm doing the things for myself that I'm doing for other people as well.
Again, this is all sort of quite tricky with everything else, because time management and everything else, because as much as you want to be, you know, your sort of kind person, think about other people, being that sort of selfless person, that team player, it's then when push comes to shove, that when you're the one who's got to step in that cage and you're referring to your own experiences in that fight camp,
yeah,
it's then, you know, trying to reprioritize almost. It's a tricky one.
Yeah. No, it is. Yeah, it's very. It's a hard balance to get right, but again, I think it's one of those things that you just got to work at it every day and every time, and try and get better at it. So I definitely felt like the last fight camp we did was the best that I'd communicated with my coaches, and the best that I kind of set time aside to develop myself, not just on the mat, outside of being on the mat. You know, develop, sit back and think about reflect on my rounds, reflect on my training that's gone on. So that's something I'm going to take forward with me now.
And also on the topic of like fight camps and everything else, strength and conditioning, obviously coming from a sort of hardcore Marines background, like the tabbing and all the rest of it, and all the ridiculous kind of physical things you put yourself through.
Yeah.
How do you deal with like a fight camp strength conditioning? Are you easy to do things more performance based and more technical, as we call it as fighters? Not a light round, no, it's a technical round.
Yeah. It's a different ball game. I mean, I remember years ago when we first opened the gym, I had a strength and conditioning coach. He really knew his stuff, and I was showing him some of the training programs that we take young Marines through, and he was just like blown. He's looking at it, going, "This is insanity. How are you going to get them? You're going to break them all. They're all going to be injured. They're going to be this. They're going to be that." And the thing what he couldn't get his head around is, when you're training Marines, you're not training them to be a gym athlete. You're training them to be a physically and mentally robust soldier. So you're not training them to be able to do 10 nice quality clean reps on a certain exercise and keep your heart rate at a certain level. You're training Marines to get out there with 100 pounds on their back, on their elbows and knees, climbing up and down on rooftops, through ditches, for hours on end, sometimes at a speedy pace, sprinting, sometimes at a long, steady pace. You're training them to be a robust individual that can kind of take on any challenge that comes with them. Now, if you had that same approach with an athlete, you would literally break them. There's training an athlete and training a Royal Marine are two different things, man. Your everyday athlete, if you took the Olympics team and put them through basic training in the Royal Marines, you would probably have 90% of them quit or get broken. It's a different animal. And vice versa. If you took 90% of Royal Marines and put them into an athlete's training program, they're not going to be able to keep up with the athlete. Because they're two totally different things. I think when you're training an athlete, it has to be performance-based. And that performance is both physical performance and your mental, your emotional performance. They are two totally different things. So when I'm training when I'm training myself, when I'm being trained as a fighter, when I'm training for fights, I obviously get coaches in to do that for me. My last training camp, I started training with Mike Wheatman, my strength and conditioning, and I learned so much off Mike, and he's a guy who I believe has a good, solid understanding of performance-based training for athletes. So again, that'll be the same for next fight camp.
I mean, it's good that you've got that. You're giving it its own respect of, okay, yes, what I was doing was relevant to what I was doing. Yeah. Whereas now I've got a new priority, a new task at hand, so now I need to give it its own attention in its own specific way. It's good that you've got that open mindset with that kind of thing. Because again, it's just tricky, because if you've been doing something that's pushed you physically that far and got you as far as it has, to then decide, okay, let's park that and let's do something else and take something else on. That's really it's really good to hear that kind of refreshing mindset.
Well, here's the thing as well, is when you join the Marines, we're always told the Marines are thinking, like, people's impressions of the military are someone who stands upright gets orders get barked at him, and he goes, "Yes, sir." And he goes and does the orders. That's not what we're looking for in the Marines. We're looking for mentally adaptable human beings, people who can mentally adapt to situations. We're looking for a thinking soldier, someone who's ready to apply best practices and change his tactics and his techniques and procedures according to what tasks at hand. So that's something I was taught in the Marines from day one, and I've took into, you know, the martial arts aspect of it now. So if I was taking my mindset of the way we train in the Marines into the way I train as a fighter, I wouldn't be showing those skills of adaptation. I wouldn't be adapting to the situation that I'm in right now or the challenges I face. I'd just be resting on my laurels and resting on what I used to do yesterday. Yesterday's yesterday. Yesterday's gone. Look at it for the experiences that it took, but adapt them for tomorrow. And that's kind of my mindset with these things.
Wow. Again, there's just so many things to pick out from these things. Back to the whole mindset and adaptability and everything else. Because how old were you when you joined the Marines?
17, yeah. And that's a sticking point as well.
Well, that's an interesting conversation in itself. But
so I'll just drop this one in there. If you're going to join the military, join when you're 18, not when you're 17. I joined when I was 17, did 12 years, left thinking, I've done 12 years, I get my half pension. About 2 weeks before I left, I was going inquiring about my half pension. They're like, yeah, you don't get one because you joined when you were 17, so your first 9 months of service don't count towards your pension. Oh. So I was like, what? And they're like, yeah, you're getting nothing. It's like, yeah, cheers, lads. So join when you're 18, not 17.
Life lesson, kids, stay in school. So talk us through joining at 17, just anyway. What was that like going through? Is it something you always wanted to do? Is it something...
No, it wasn't something I always wanted to do. I just always wanted to do something different. I never wanted to do the run-of-the-mill 9 to 5. Never wanted to work a normal. You know, when you're going through school and they're telling you if you do well in this subject, you can get these type of jobs or whatever. For me, they'd tell me the jobs you can get, and I'd think that sounds like hell. I'm not doing that. I always wanted to do something different. And then my dad was in the military, so I always looked up to my dad, and I always wanted to be like my dad. And all my dad's best friends are like the guys I call my uncles. They are family to me. And they're military guys, and I've always looked up to and still look up to them today. So they always kind of pushed me in that direction. And then one of my best friends one day, Matty Williams, showed me a recruitment video of the Marines, and I was like, "Fuck, I'm doing that. Those guys are badass." And that's kind of how I ended up in the Marines. Yeah.
Because you're talking about your sort of mindset with dealing with all these situations, all the adversity and everything else. But when it comes to being in that position, being in these horrible, breaking you down to become that robust, thinking soldier, where did that mindset come from at that point then? Because obviously you're still quite young and...
Yeah, well, when you actually join the Marines, the process, it is what you just described. It's break you down to build you up. Because first of all, they've got to break down all the bad habits you've got as a I don't want to sound derogatory to anyone here, but as a civilian, we do a lot of things that we can't, and I do them now that you can't do in the Marines. Like you can't press snooze on your alarm clock in the Marines. You can't have a 5-minute lie-in. You can't tidy your bed in half an hour. You've got to do it now. You can't put your weapon away at night and think, "Oh, I'll clean that in the morning." No, that's got to be clean tonight. Do you get what I mean? There's loads of things like it in normal everyday today life.
Sort of leeway kind of thing.
We can do. We can have leeway with, but we can't in the Marines. So first of all, they have to nail that out of you. They have to get that out of you. Get away all the bad habits. Then they've got to kind of break down your ego, because obviously you join up thinking, I'm going to be the baddest motherfucker on the planet. I'm going to be a Royal Marine. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. You get there, and then they have to knock all that out of you. They've got to make you humble. They've got to make you a team player. They've got to make you realise that you've got work to do to earn that green beret. You're not the finished article. In fact, you're not even fucking A on the article yet. You can't even spell the word article yet. But so they've got to break you down, and then they've got to build you up. So they break you down, break all them bad habits, break that sense of ego you've got, and then they build you up. They build your self-confidence. That they build your vision. First, I'd say of what a professional soldier is, what a professional Marine is. Then they build your foundations of skills. Then they build your confidence in them skills. They build your teamwork, your team cohesion. And then by the end of the 32 weeks basic training, you are the finished product. Like I say at the start of it, you don't even have a clue what the finished product is. I've been talking quite a lot to a few people about something called the Dunning-Kruger effect, and anyone at home, it's well worth looking into. It's where you don't know what you don't know. So when you join the Marines, your confidence is this high that you think you know what a Marine is, you think you know what basic training is, you think you know how you're going to handle it. And then as it goes on, you start to realise, oh, I don't know. And your confidence in what you know drops like this. Because you realise that you don't know anything about being a Marine. You don't even know what a night in the field looks like or it feels like until you've experienced it for the first time. And you're soaking wet through on Dartmoor and it's -3. And then you realise, shit, I've got another 10 days of this and I'm freezing, starving, and I'm lonely and I can't do this. You know what I mean? And then you realise, and your confidence drops. And then when they start to build you up, you start building your belief, your confidence gets back up and builds up and it builds up. And by the time you hit that 32-week period, you're at the top where you are the finished effect, you're black belt, you understand what being a Marine is. And that's kind of the process that they take you through, yeah. Dunning-Kruger, look it up.
I mean, you're really selling that. Freezing cold in the field, -10 days left to go. That's that's a lot of why I wanted to sort of get you on to talk about this kind of stuff, because we don't know what we don't know and the rest of it, and the insights to all this kind of stuff. I mean, it's asking these questions. It's scratching the surface of stuff, because obviously you see all the films and all the rest of it, and you get an idea of Call of Duty. Like, oh, okay, this is your basic training. Like, no. It's the intricacies, it's the finer details. Like with the fighting and the weight cutting and everything else, people think, oh, okay, you just have a bit of salad and that's the end of that. They don't appreciate the hot baths and the many tears and the, staring at bits of chocolate.
Like, people only see the iceberg. They don't see the top of the iceberg. They don't see everything that goes on underneath it. And when you watch the recruitment videos for the military, or you watch a film or whatever, and it looks cool because you got some guy in camo and all his kit's in the right place and it looks like a badass and his weapon and he's accurate and he's fire and he's fit and he's confident. He wasn't that on day one. He wasn't that on day one. I guarantee you, just like I was on day one, he was shitting himself. He couldn't keep up with the pace. He didn't have a clue what he was doing. He didn't even know his name at that point. It's all the work that goes on behind the scenes and all those little experiences. For instance, like what I'm talking about there of being freezing cold and wet through. The experience of being woken up at 3 a.m. when you're asleep in your sleeping bag and you're already freezing cold, shivering, and being told it's your turn on sentry and you've got to unzip your sleeping bag, you've got to put all your wet clothes back on. It's like I say, it's 3 a.m, it's pitch black. You can't use any light because you've got to be tactical. So you're putting everything on in the silent, in the dark, not making any noise. Then you crawl up to your sentry position, you get in position, and you've got 2 hours there, and it's just pouring down on you. The wind's blowing a hoolie. In that 2 hours, the amount of experience you get is unbelievable. You take the 2 hours you've had there of that night and compare it to every other night's experience of your life, where you get in bed and you have 8 hours nice sleep in a warm bed and you get up. Those 2 hours, the experience you get in it is condensed and multiplied. It's intense, man. Yeah.
So, talk us through like a bit more of your experience in the Marines. So, say you finished your basic training. How many tours did you go on in the end?
My recruit troop was a crazy one, right? Because I don't know if you remember the foot and mouth disease years ago. I think it was sheep and cattle and stuff had it on all the farms around. So we couldn't go on exercise in Dartmoor. So they actually sent us to America for 3 weeks of basic training. So even when I was a recruit, we got sent to West Virginia for 3 weeks training package. And it was literally that point that that proper ignited my fight. Obviously I joined the Marines, and when you're in basic training, you're up and down like this because you have some good days, you have some bad days. You have some days where you feel like you're on top of the game. You have days where you feel like you're lagging behind and you can't keep up with the pace. Then we went to America on the 3-week training package in West Virginia, and it lit a fire in me. I loved every minute of it. I felt like I was learning and getting better every minute of it, every day of it, and that experience really kind of springboarded the rest of my career. And then as soon as I left basic training, I got to 4-2 Commando. We went straight back to America. So, I mean, I got a good few trips of tours of America in doing stuff like mountain training, desert training over there. Did some urban warfare training over in America. I did tours of the Arctic as well up in northern Norway, where we go out for 4 months doing Arctic warfare training, as the Marines are the Arctic warfare specialists for the British military. I went back as well and did a military ski instructor's course and a Arctic warfare assistant instructor's course, which is like you help out the full Arctic warfare instructors. Couple of tours like Iraq, Afghanistan, places like that, Senegal, Northern Ireland as well. I'm trying to wrap my brains for all the places we went to, but yeah, it was a pretty busy time. There was 1 year where I came home from a 6-month tour of Iraq, came home for a week, then went back to Norway for a 4-month tour, came back for about 3 weeks, and then we went on an exercise in Dartmoor, I think it was, on a crap exercise that was absolutely dog shit, and didn't see my wife for more than 2 months out of about 15. That's the life you sign up for.
And that's part of it also isn't appreciated, that kind of the rest of your family and sort of friends' commitments sort of get put on hold, and everyone's got a sort of, I don't know, it's sort of really underappreciated the amount of sacrifices that go on top of your physical sacrifices you're going through.
Yeah, well, especially for those that are at home. I mean, when you're in a war zone, if you're in Iraq or Afghanistan or Sierra Leone or some of the guys over in Syria and places like that now, your wife and kids are at home. They don't know if you're coming home. They don't know. I mean, one of the times I went to Iraq, we got told we were going on a 4-month tour, and it ended up 7 months. So, and during that 4 months, your family's waiting for you to come home, not knowing if you're going to get injured or killed, and then it gets to the 3.5 month point, and then they get told, oh yeah, you're staying for an extra 3 months. For you as the Marine on the ground that's out there, it's not that bad. You're already in that light, that way of living. And while you're there, you do get that tunnel vision. All that's on your mind at that point is soldiering. You don't give a shit about the outside world. Literally, couldn't care less about the outside world, as in what football team's winning or what's going on in politics. I don't even know. I'm still not interested in them things. But you get what I mean? You don't care about the outside world. All you care about is what you're doing and what your lads are doing in that operation at that time. So it's easy for you. But for those that are home, that are waiting for you, and then they get banged with, yeah, he's going to be home in 3 months' time. Now they've got an extra 3 months to worry about whether you're going to live or die or come home or whatever. It's a big thing, man. It's a big thing. And, unfortunately, some people don't come home, and the families then spent all that time sitting, waiting for them, dealing with that, looking forward, that excitement to seeing them come home, and then they don't come home. And that's, that's something that everyone pays a lot of attention to, PTSD in soldiers or military personnel when we come back home. But what the families go through is just, if not more significant in some cases.
I mean, I couldn't even begin to imagine. Before we carry on with anything else, I just want to thank you for your service. I mean, everything you've put yourself through for all of us. It's something
that's appreciated, man.
As you know, it's not always acknowledged, and people need to bit more of an effort to acknowledge the things that go on overseas and that. But no.
Do you know what though? Before we do move on, I do think there has been a shift in that over the last few years. I think that people do appreciate the military and the services a lot more than they used to. And one point I want to make on that is, like, I get a lot of people or I hear a lot of people say, "Oh, the younger generation, they don't respect the older generation," or these kids coming through nowadays don't know what we went through in my day and stuff. But again, in my experience, the younger guys that like reply to my messages or reply to my Instagram story or my Instagram feed when I'm talking about my military stuff, I literally get more feedback or positive messages or kind of thanks or whatever it is. Not that I want thanks, but I get more from younger guys than I do older guys. I get so many more younger guys get in contact with me and say, thanks for putting that out. Whatever you put out was inspiring or whatever, or I'd love to do that when I'm older. I think we've got a strong younger generation, me, and I think that that they are respecting and seeing what people have done before them. I think we're in a good place, man. I think a lot of people don't realise that maybe because they don't interact with the younger people as much. I have a lot of interaction with younger people as a coach and as with the stuff I put out there on my social media, and I think we're in a good place. I think a lot of younger people out there do respect and do see what's gone before them, and actually a lot of them do aim to do it in their futures.
I guess that comes back to what we said earlier about you get what you put in that kind of thing. Obviously, coaching people, younger generation, and also to point out as well is being in sort of MMA spotlight of sort of the big shows and all this kind of stuff. Having that instead of the sort of trash talking kind of mindset, it's a lot more integrity. It's a lot more genuine kind of things about how you've dealt with situations. A bit more positive, a bit more giving something back to people. Not necessarily like cliched motivational things. It's more just understanding situations, understanding stuff, processing.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is one thing. I've had quite a lot of people say to me stuff like, I should do a podcast or whatever, and I've always kind of steered away from it because I don't want to be a motivational speaker. I don't particularly believe in motivation. I believe in discipline. I never want to come across as preachy or any of that shit because I make just as many mistakes as anyone else does, and I've got just as much to learn as anyone else has. But if I can use a few experiences that I've had and I can present them in a way that's going to help someone else, then that's all I want to do. That's all I want to do with that kind of stuff.
So you don't fancy being the Rochdale David Goggins?
I can't run like that guy.
He's the most insane man in the world. I don't know how he does.
Even with David Goggins, I mean, some people give him a bit of shit because he's very, over the top and flamboyant with what he does. But when you break it down, he's got good lessons, and the lessons that he speaks of come from places of good experience. So if you break them down to the fundamentals of what he's speaking about, that's a very motivating guy you've got right there.
Well, this is it. What you just said there about discipline is better than motivation, and what's what you believe in. That's something he was saying as well, and it's so true because you feel motivated, then something happens, and you lose that motivation. If you're disciplined to say, "I'm going to training at this time because I want to train and get better and fight in big shows," that's all you need. You don't need the necessary I've watched the UFC compilation. I'm going to be the next whatever.
Yeah. You need discipline and commitment. You need to be disciplined. You need to be committed. Motivation waves, doesn't it? After you've had a weekend off training, you're motivated for Monday, and then you train hard Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. You're crushed, and then you're not very motivated for Thursday and Friday. You just want to have a couple of days off. So that you've got motivation is a good kickstart. You're motivated to do something, but you can't rely on it to see you through a fight camp or see you through a process of something that's going to take a long time and be worthwhile doing. You've got to sit back and rely on your discipline, your commitment, and you've got to rely on your passion for that endeavor, whatever that endeavor is. If you want to be a world champion in fighting, you better be fucking passionate about it. You better wake up in the mornings thinking about it. You better go to bed at night thinking about it. If it's just a passing thought, or if it's just something you're saying, not living, then you're not going to be a world champion. First of all, you've got to be passionate about it, and then you've got to set yourself some strict standards of discipline, and then you've got to be committed to them. Your motivation will go up and down, but those things have got to stay.
100%. It's the substance that your whole training's built on, isn't it? It's what brings you to the gym, what gets you out of bed, what gives you all this kind of stuff.
It is, yeah.
Just before I let you go, I've got a couple of questions or FAQs just to go through. Advice to a new coach, someone who's just started coaching.
Take things slowly. That's all I'd say. Take things slowly. So don't run before you can walk. Learn the game. Learn it. Don't kind of like learn your. How do I explain that? Don't think that what you know about the game is the game, because it's not. My experience of the game is not the game. It's just my experience of it. So I have to look to other coaches for their experience of the game, and other fighters for their experience of the game, to try and pull it all together and make me a better coach. So to a new coach, don't run before you can walk. Try and look for all them other experiences. Try and build up slowly, and understand that you've got big shoes to grow into, and take that time, put that time in.
This is so important as well, because when it comes to coaching, it's so tempting to try and keep everything so like stimulating, to try and be all this flashy stuff. Like, oh, please come to my class, please support the gym. Oh, we'll teach you all the cool spinning leg lock stuff, all the fancy stuff. But whereas on top of that, it's then knowing what works as a whole and be prepared to try different things, and that it's a tricky one to try and do all of these things all at once.
Fundamentals first, I think, is like what you touched on there. We'll call it fundamentals first. We'll always coach people the fundamentals, make sure that all the fundamentals are solid, and then they'll find all the flashy shit themselves. They'll work out what fits the flashy shit or cool, good-looking stuff. But if the fundamentals aren't solid, none of that's work. And as a young coach or as a new coach, that is solid advice. Focus on your fundamentals as a coach. Focus on your athletes' fundamentals as fighters, as martial artists. Build from there, because the rest will come. That'll come naturally.
Perfect. And advice to someone leaving the services, say on their own accord, intact, hopefully. What's their next step?
So, someone who's leaving the military, before you leave the military, make sure you've got a plan in place. Do not put your notice in until you know what you're going to do. Make sure you've got a plan in place, knowing what it is you want to do. And again, that should go back to the things we talked about a minute ago. Do something that involves your passion. Don't be just looking for a 9-to-5 job when you leave. If you're a military man, or especially if you're a Royal Marine, that's not going to cut it for you. You're going to need something challenging. But make a plan before you put your shit in, before you put your notice in. And then that last year, while you're working your notice out, it's about you then, lads. Don't worry about promotion at that point. Don't worry about ticking all the military boxes. At that point, square your own shit away. Get your qualifications in the bag that you need before you leave. Get your plan laid out, so you know the day after you leave, you know what you're doing. You're not going to start thinking about what to do that day. You know what you're doing that day. But that last year, when you're working your notice out, put as much effort into your future as you can, because it'll hit you like a ton of bricks, and once you're there, you're there.
Martin, you've been an absolute gentleman. Thank you so much for your time here. Have you got anyone you want to shout out? Any sponsors you want to shout out?
Do you know what? I don't like to shout sponsors out sometimes on podcasts, especially with all this crazy shit that's going on with coronavirus. And right now, I'd rather just say to everyone at home to stay safe and to just keep a strong mindset and keep doing stuff that you enjoy doing, and keep trying to learn and improve every day.
Thank you very much for your time. Thank you again for your service. And this episode is sponsored by Mauler MMA. Use code FCMMA20 at checkout to get 20% off on all Mauler attire and gloves.